Okay, I don't think we've answered this one yet. Xander Wood. Shout out Xander Wood really fast. He is actually going to be one of our Moto Academy athletes. Podcast question. Can we talk about flaggers? There's a lot of hype about flaggers at the amateur and amateur national events, and some of it is concerning. Dave, have you ever had a flagger experience? Positive or negative?
Southwick, for sure. Typically Southwick has decent flaggers because they usually pull out people like locals all the time. So, but it was Southwick. I think I can't remember the year. I was on big bikes. The track was going. Which way does the track go now? It was going backwards from where it's going, from the direction it's going currently.
So left off the start.
Yep. And do you know the section where Stewart, whatever year it was in the 450, bike locked up, kind of like down like that little gully up at the top of the track?
Where the old parking was.
Yep.
Up on the hill.
Around that section, somebody was down, and I came just hauling it through that section. And I don't think they were able to get the flag out in time, or their head was turned or something. And I just tried to avoid it, and bike swapped. I'm all over the place. There's a little body of water sitting right there. Went right in the water. I had to pull my bike out, dude. It was a pain, but nothing too like insane. We're like, oh, dude, I ended up getting like run over. Or, I avoided that one, but I know there's some scenarios where people are getting like really, really hurt.
That section is the worst section at Southwick for that to happen too.
Yeah.
I've had many experiences. You want to know where I've had multiple and probably some of the worst?
Oh, where's that?
It was actually at Mini O's.
Really? Wait, outdoors,
yeah, I don't know
outdoors
what
or
it
Supercross?
was.
Which one?
Both. But the Moto track, I'd say the Moto track
Supercross?
more frequently. I don't know if it's just there's a lot of steep hills and there's a lot of elevation, and so I don't know where they're sourcing their flaggers from for Mini O's, but I specifically remember some not so good situations that I was actually involved in. And then I've seen some video clips, or I've been in the stands watching, and everybody in the stands are like, there's somebody down.
Yeah.
And the flaggers just kind of, and this was before the age of cell phones even. I mean, I'm talking Mini O's days when I was on 60s, 80s.
Oh,
People weren't like sitting there on their cell phone type of deal. But yeah, you have incidents though, even in the pros, where if it's left up to a human, you're going to have human error. That's why I think that's actually why I think the argument for the Cardo systems is such an obvious one.
Yeah.
We're just having an in-helmet communication system.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I also was watching Formula One Drive to Survive last night, which I've never watched, and I was getting so into it.
Oh my! You know what? I've been telling. Hold on. I hate the fact that I tell you stuff like, "Hey, you know what's pretty cool? This one series," and you're like, "Dude, nah, no worries." And then 4 years later, you're like, "You know what's cool? This drive. Have you seen this Drive to Survive stuff?" I'm like, you frustrate me to no end. But yeah,
it's so good. I was wondering how we got started talking about that, but where we need to start, Dave, is in-helmet communication.
Okay. Oh crap. Yeah. Oh jeez.
Duh. We need to start with in-helmet communication, because I watched that show, and they show the dynamic of kind of the team communication as they're driving.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many freaking uses for that in Moto.
Yes.
So many. You would no longer would the situations of a flag or human error be an issue.
Nope.
You know, you'd be able to communicate to somebody in 2 seconds. Now, would there have to be guidelines as to like how you could use it?
Yes.
Would it change the racing? Yeah, but I almost think that would be interesting, because there'd be so many angles that you could play there. And think about from a fan's perspective, you could get into the helmet of the team communicating with the rider and vice versa, rider communicating back to the team.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, that would be the most interesting thing of all time. Again, we say this with a bias because we love Supercross, but
yeah.
And then at any level, at Winchester, since you just asked about Winchester, Dave, I want to have a rental system or something to where when parents show up for the race, they can rent a Cardo system for the day, and we'll set it up in their helmet. We'll get them all hooked up, and give them a quick maybe lesson of how it works. I also want to do sort of like hire a coach for a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get a Cardo system in your helmet, and then you could have one of the Moto Academy coaches in your ear as you're racing for that day. I think there's a lot of cool concepts that I have with it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to test it in our own Supercross promotion to where, you know, we're not held down by, it's not an AMA sanctioned event, or we don't have to abide by this or that. We can really try what we want. I'm pumped because I'm obsessed with the Cardo system. And also we have partnered at the end of last year. Actually, we partnered with Cardo, signed an extension to that deal. So we were partnered with Cardo this year.
Nice.
And yeah, lots of good stuff coming, Dave. Have you used it yet on a moto track?
I have not used it on Moto Trek. I've used it for chassis development when I was doing that for Harley a couple years ago. We used that to communicate between just different handling exercises, stuff like that. But I have not, and I think it'd be cool, like if you can separate it almost into 3 silos, where you've got racing strategy and tactic is a benefit, rider safety, like you mentioned, but also you could have there's a mechanic component too, where if someone's smoking their clutch or someone has an issue, the mechanic can get on and say, hey, lay off the clutch, we got to have this engine last for the next 5 laps or something, or hey, rear shock's getting hot, I would jump through the whoops, I wouldn't skim them, or so whatever it is. I think there's really cool silos that you can break it up into and where they would benefit. So I see it as a plus. I think it's cool. Makes our sport safer, but also adds another element to it, which I'm all for that, you know?
Yeah. If every other motorsport has it, why don't we have it yet? I've
Exactly.
no clue. If you guys enjoyed this podcast clip and you want to listen to full episodes, you can do so on Spotify and Apple Music. If you want to send in your own video submission, you can join us in the Moto Academy family inside of the Moto Academy app by just going to themotoacademy.com. That's also where you can sign up for a class. Okay, guys, see you next episode.